Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to the TCEC Season 18 Premier Division. So if you ask yourself who is in the lead, it's not LCZero, it's not Stockfish, it's not even AllieStein, it's the neural network based chess engine Stoofvlees. It's playing really incredible chess. Maybe it has improved in the meanwhile. Basically, I don't care who's in the lead. I just care for good chess, as I always like to say. It's not that I'm really stuck to LCZero games or maybe Stockfish games. I'm really searching for the best engine that will play in this TCEC Season 18. And so far, as I mentioned, this very nice engine is in the lead. So today I decided to show you a great game played by Stoofvlees against another table-based engine. It's rofChade. It's also a powerful engine, but in this game you should really see the power of this neural network based chess engine. So let's check out the game. It had really some great positional and tactical elements as usual in this top engine game. So it's really incredible for me to watch these games because as I mentioned also in my previous videos, this is really the best chess that we can see in the world now. The engines are so evolved. We have now so many great engines. We have at least 10 or 15 engines that are really over 3,000 rating points, so it's really incredible. Let's check out really now this game. I think this game is good to watch for us because it's not such a tactical game. It can be really shown to also beginners how you should make progress, how you should make your plan in chess, because it has really some great strategical elements. So here, knight to f3 played by Stoofvlees. We have knight to f6 by rofChade, knight to c3. After c5 we have e4. So far we have Sicilian with the move knight to c3, which most of the times leads into a close Sicilian setup. We have a knight to c6, the 4 knights variation, now bishop to b5, sort of a Nechmedinov attack, the Nechmedinov attack basically goes without this move knight to c3, but this bishop to b5 idea is a very positional idea because we're already challenging the knight on c6, and it seems so maybe that black could go knight to d4 after knight takes d4. Okay, here you could lose maybe a piece, but the problem is this lack of development of blacks. If you try knight to e4, after knight to e2, if you try knight to e4, then also I think white can take this pawn in the center, and you see we have already a great activity with our two minor pieces. Our next idea is of course to play something like queen to e2, challenging the knight, and white is I think already in trouble. So here after the move bishop to b5, g6 is played by this other engine rofChade. This g6 move Magnus Carlsen often played against Fabiano Caruana in the World Championship match, basically inviting now white to take the knight on c6. But here e5 was played, challenging the knight after knight to g4. Now the pawn on e5 is twice attacked by these two knights, and we have now finally this positional idea, bishop takes c6. After d takes c6, h3 was played, knight to h6, and we have now a new position in which the knight is out of game. The knight has of course a good square on f5, but what white doesn't have is of course the bishop pair, and the main idea here for black is to somehow get rid of this double pawn structure. So if black manages to do that, if black somehow maybe trades this c5 pawn, for instance, for a d pawn, and goes into middle game with the healthy pawn structure and two bishops on the board, then black is on the advantage. But now so far it's an equal game, good opportunities for both sides. What white wants to do here is the position to be close. So what white wants to do is really to have a compact position in the center, relying simply also around this e5 pawn, because this e5 is basically our main strategical advantage. It's of course on the other side of the board, it's on the side of the board of our opponent, so we should simply build our attack around this e5 pawn. When we watch the side where we should attack, then we always watch where this pawn is. So this pawn is on the king side, so we should attack on the king side. So here of course from white's perspective we want to defend on the queen side because we have strategical disadvantage on the queen side. So here you should maybe try a blockade with the move a4, maybe a5, to stop a little bit black's progress on the queen side and then attack on the king side. So here d3 was played. We have bishop to g7 and now knight to e4, attacking immediately the c5 pawn, which basically can be only protected by two pieces. One is the pawn, of course, and one is the queen. In the game, rofChade played the move b6, but queen to b6 is not such a good move because you get immediately a4. If you try something like a5, then you see we have forced basically black to do another pawn move, and it will be very hard for black then maybe to make progress with some b5 moves. In the game, we could play something like knight to d2 and then knight to c4, again cementing our structure here further with the move knight to c4, kicking away the queen. Queen to e2 would be sort of an idea, simply improving our pawn on e5 and simply keep the position compact. So that's why here, as I said, b6 was played. Still, it is of course a very nice pawn structure so far, but again, I'm pointing you out, black would love to make this c4 move. So far it's not possible. In the game, a4, as I said, here we want to block the queen side and advance on the king side, where we have the advantage because we have this advanced pawn on e5. So knight to f5, here a5. What Stoofvlees is trying to do is to split pawns. If you take, for instance, b takes a5, okay, you have grabbed another pawn, you have an extra pawn, but all of these pawns are basically a weakness, so they're not well placed. They're object of white's attack. We could immediately take this pawn on c5, then attack maybe the c6, then after that then a5, a7. So all of these pawns would be really vulnerable to white's attack. So that's why you don't want to take. You want to stay a little bit with this pawn structure like this, and that's why in the game bishop to a6 played by rofChade. Here castling, and castling also by rofChade. So I've asked myself this question: why black didn't make progress with the move c4? So why black doesn't attack immediately this d3 pawn? So then you get, I think, this move d4. So then we get again another supporter of this e5 pawn. Then the position is again very nice in the center for white, and you could maybe try again to challenge white's central control with the move c5, but we simply pass through. Again, we have two connected pawns. You see how advanced they are. They are restricting really these four important squares, so it's already a bad position for black. Black is simply pushed away by these two centralized pawns. You could try maybe to attack here with the move bishop to b7, but knight to c3 again solves the position. And if you try something like b5 to attack this knight, which is of course the protector of d5, then you get simply a6 attacking the bishop, and after bishop to c8, I think it's really a great position here for white. These two pawns are simply incredible. You couldn't you couldn't counterplay somehow. If you again try e6, then we again simply pass through with the potential d6 move, and again we simply move further. So that's why after castling also played by this other engine rofChade, and we have now rook to e1. The idea behind this move is to support further our e5 pawn, which I said is our main strategical advantage because we have occupied our opponent's side of the board. Because we want to play much more freely with these two knights, maybe dance a little bit around here black's king with these knights, and still have opportunities to defend this pawn. But not that we have only opportunities to defend this pawn, we have also opportunities to push the pawn further with the move e6, then really crack the position in front of black's king. So here knight to d4 was played, and now very important move which I think most of us wouldn't see. It's the move c4. It's a really risky move. And I talked about this position for a while. Why is white leaving this pawn on d3 a little bit weak? There is one problem for black here. If you want to attack this pawn with other pieces, for instance queen to d7, rook to d8, then you have to get out with your knight from the d file. So you cannot play on the same you cannot play on the d file attack and still have this knight outposted on d4. So it's cannot go both ways. You have to decide if you want to go on our strategical advantage with this advanced knight, or we want to play on our d file attack. So in order to make a d file attack, you have to get out with your knight somewhere. And if you take knight takes f3, queen to f3, This is maybe a possibility, but again, we could again play after that rook to d1 and simply support a pawn on d3. So in the game, rofChade tried here h6. The idea behind this move is to restrict white's ability to play knight to g5, and as I said, this e6 move could be really tricky. So it could be sort of an attack. Of course, we would have to play with the e knight to e from e to g5, and then after that e6. So okay, so far the position is about equal after the move c4, and we have now this move h6, and now rook to a2. Very nice move here by Stoofvlees. The idea behind this move is again defensive, but also an attacking idea. We want to play b3, and then maybe to play something like rook to d2 in order to support our weak d3 pawn. But also, if we manage to play something like f4, maybe to get this rook somewhere to the f file or to the g file, then we could play really on our pawn storm. So rook lifts I've seen now many times in this top engine levels. So basically the hardest moves to find in the chess games are rook moves, believe me or not. So that's why I always like when I see how these engines are playing with this rook to a2. We have knight to e6 and now b3. So far this d3 is not endangered. As I said, black needs many moves in order to make something happen on the d file. First of all, we have to play queen to d7, then maybe rook from a to d8, but still we have also always defensive resources with rook to d2 or similar ideas. So we have king to h7, h4 played by Stoofvlees. Very nice move because you have to decide now what to do. The idea is of course to play h5 and crack the position in front of black's king, and if you try to block the position with the move h5, it's again not a good position for black, because you get simply a knight to g5 with a check, knight takes g5, comes with another check after king to g8. You have this idea, as I mentioned. That's why this move rook to e1 was a very nice move, and after something like f6, in order to kick away the knight, we have simply possibilities to cement our knight on a very nice square, knight to f7, with possibilities to after that play something like bishop to h6, then maybe get the queen somehow here to f3, maybe even to g3. So it will be, I think, a lost position for black. So after the move h4, here king to h8 played by rofChade, and we have now knight to h2. So the idea is, as I said, a very important move f4, because we have now already advanced this pawn on h4, and I'm pointing you out that we have only created this attack on the king side. So as I said, the pawn on e5 is advanced on the king side, so we are attacking the king side. So bishop to b7, here we have f4, we have queen to d4. It's of course the check, but another problem. We have bishop to e3, kicking away the queen, queen to d7, and now a6. So again, this idea, b takes a5, you saw was really not a good move. Basically with this move a5, Stoofvlees a little bit paralyzed the queen side. As I said, we wanted to block the potential black's attack on the queen side, so this a5 was a very important move, not only from this defensive point of view, also from this attacking point of view. You see black didn't make any progress here on the queen side, couldn't advance these pawns, although black has of course this pawn majority. It means black has always this 4 versus 3 situation somehow here, but it's not a possibility so far, because this a5 is paralyzing so far the queen side. So a6, as I said, bishop to c8, and now finally this move h5. So what to do here? Basically, if you pass through, it's very risky here with the move g5. Then you get simply f5. The knight has to move, and we have simply f6 wins a piece. So you see it's not possible here for black to pass through with this move g5. Maybe if you take here g takes h5, then you're basically inviting the queen into the attack with queen to h5, again with possibilities to play f5, f6. This bishop would be very dangerous. We are aiming also against this h6, so you see it's not possible to take this pawn, and also it's not possible to pass through here with the move g5. So that's why knight to c7 and now g4. Very nice move by Stoofvlees. Now we get really our pawn storm going. We want to really split these pawns in front of the king. We want to open files, open diagonals, because the king is endangered here. You see the king is a little bit locked there, and our control, our piece control is very well. The coordination of the pieces is of course very good, because we are aiming on the king side with all of our pieces. We have now even the possibility to include another attacker into the game with the move rook to g2 or rook to f2, whatever we need. Of course, the rook has a flexible position. That's why, as I mentioned, I really liked this move rook to a2. So in the game, knight to a6. Okay, we have lost the pawn, but you see how many troubles black had in order to make something on the queen side. Okay, you have your pawn, but still you haven't advanced any pawns on the queen side. You haven't made progress on the queen side. Now it's time for me to play rook to g2, and look at this position. All of these pieces are aiming here on the king side, so it is a monstrous attack here. I'm not sure how black should defend here. Whatever you saw, pawn moves are not possible. This bishop is blocked out by its own queen, so the bishop again needs too many tempos in order to get somehow into the game. So the bishop pair is not important here. Then it's usual, of course, you could have this advantage of the bishop pair, but you see how the bishop pair can sometimes be bad in chess. Here, knight to b4 played by rofChade, and we have now knight to f2 protecting this pawn on d3, and now king to g8 was played again. If you try something like rook to d8, I've asked myself this question: why isn't black attacking simply the d file? Because the d3 pawn is a weakness. Then you get a very, very tricky move. It's the move e6. So the problem about this move is you don't want to take, of course, with the f pawn, because again, this pawn structure would be too vulnerable. Then we can simply take this pawn on g6. g5 is the possibility. If you take with the queen here, with the queen on e6, then we have the possibility to play bishop to c5, a very, very nice discovered attack on the queen, and you lose the knight. Basically, the best way here is to proceed probably to take simply the bishop, and then leaving your queen hanging, and somehow get into the game with the move bishop to e6. So you would be forced to sacrifice your queen. So, but it's again, I think, a better position for white. So after the move e6, you could play here instead of this rook to d8 idea. You saw this is not a good idea. You could play again maybe this idea to g takes h5, but then you get this very, very tricky move g5. So if you take, then we get queen to h5, and again it's game over. So the only move that defends here for black is queen to f5, but again queen to h5. Queen to g6 is a defensive idea, but simply queen to e2, and you see we have again the possibility to open the g file. This rook from a2 to g2 was a very important attacking move, so again black is lost, I think. So as I said, knight to f2, you saw rook to d8 is not a possibility. G takes h5 is also not a possibility here. rofChade tried this defensive move to get this king more centralized, to get this king out of this mess, because the king has to protect also this weak f7 square. In the game, knight to f3 played by Stoofvlees, simply improving the position of the knight, and we have now a5. Finally, black gets his attack on the queen side, but it's a little bit too late, because we have now knight to h4 attacking simply here this g6 weakness, and now a4. We have b takes a4, bishop to a6, and now finally h takes g6. The position in front of the king, in front of black's king, is simply too dangerous. If you try something like f takes g6, it's game over, because you get simply knight to g6. You have to move the rook somewhere, and then we get simply again our goal g5. So if you take knight takes d3, we can simply take knight takes queen takes d3, and now queen to h5 again comes very actively into the game, with possibilities to play g takes h6, again open the g file. Everything is protected. You can get maybe with your bishop, but here to c4, but it's again game over, I think. So here after the move h takes g6, black tried bishop to c4. hoping maybe here for a simplification, but simply Stoofvlees took d takes c4, queen takes, knight takes, and now knight to d3. Another problem, we have rook to f1, we have e6, and now rook to d2, attacking the knight, knight to b4. It's now very easy for white to find the best next move, because we of course up some material, so it's very hard here now for black to battle, although black could make maybe some kind of a pass pawn here, but it's not good, because it's simply too slow. Here in the game, knight to c3, we have rook to a7, and now king to g2, improving the position of the king, rook to b8, and now knight to e4. Very nice move. We want to get our knight on this very active square f6, rook to a8, and now knight to f6, bishop takes, e takes f6, and now f takes g6. It's game over, because we have now g5. It's supporting this very nice pawn on f6. We want to have this supported pawn here. It's basically black doesn't have good moves here. King to f7. We have a knight to f3, king to e8, and here after knight to e5, rofChade resigned, because whatever you do, you could maybe try rook to a4. But the idea is simple one. We can play simply rook to h1, attacking here this pawn. If you try to take it, then here we can simply play rook to h1, then simply pass through with our pawn. So as I said here, you can try maybe king to f8, maybe to stop a little bit this potential advance of the pawn. But again, king to h1, if you take here, you get even checkmated. So if you pass through here with the move h5, then we can simply take knight to g6. So too many possibilities here for white. As I said, black here resigned. So great game by Stoofvlees. It's in the lead. As I said, we'll see who play in the super final, because now LCZero and Stockfish are behind. Also, this other top engine AllieStein is also behind Stoofvlees. As I said, I don't care who wins, who play in the super final. I only care about good games, and this was, I think, a perfect game in order to show you the skills by this very nice engine Stoofvlees. It had really some great tactical and positional elements, and that are the chess games that I really like. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games played by computers, with some more AlphaZero, LeelaZero, Stockfish games, and many more. And you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games played by humans, the best chess games in history. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thank you for watching, guys, and chess the best, of course.